And California's own Vice President Harris is going to campaign in San Francisco today. But first, she made an appearance on Late Night with Jimmy Kimmel. Is that what the name of the show is? I don't know. It happened last night. And here's her pitch to the voters.
Jimmy Kimmel Live.
Sure.
When we came into office, we offered, as the first bill, a comprehensive pathway for citizenship, including taking care of our dreamers, fixing the broken aspects of the system, including what we need to do to reinforce security at the border. The Republicans in Congress got a call from Donald Trump, don't do the deal, because, you see, he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. He intends to weaponize the Department of Justice against his political enemies. He admires dictators and says he'll be a dictator on day one. The notion that is, I think, very backwards to suggest it's a sign of weakness to have empathy, to have some level of concern or care about the well-being of other people, and then go about doing something to uplift their condition. That's the track that we take.
Well, that's her version of events. Fox News contributor Joe Concha joins us now. And Joe, on top of all of that, she also reacted to the Trump verdict and said that Trump is a cheater and cheaters don't like getting caught. What do you think about the vice president's appearance on the late night show?
Wow, Carly, ask yourself this, okay? Given that Jimmy Kimmel has told anyone who remotely supports Donald Trump not to watch his show, which is, by the way, a very distant third in the late night ratings, how many voters does a Kamala Harris appearance on Jimmy Kimmel Live bring to her side and Joe Biden's side? To quote Dean Wormer, the answer is 0.0. So she could run to all the safe spaces she wants and say the ridiculous things that she just said. In the end, Jimmy Kimmel is not a comedian. He's the unofficial chairman of the Democratic National Committee, and pretty much an unfunny one at that. This does nothing whatsoever except show that the vice president cannot do any interview that remotely consists of a challenging question. So here we are. Yes, she could run there and talk about how she really wanted to fix the border and Joe Biden really wanted to fix the border and make jokes about Donald Trump and his trial. The bottom line is that while this is great for the MSNBC crowd, they'll be playing these clips all morning, it does nothing as far as doing the real work that she needs to do, which is to bring voters independents and those who are on the fence onto the side of Biden and Harris, who right now are being outraised at a blistering pace by Donald Trump and his team at this point.
Yeah, you are the border czar. You should be able to overcome obstacles as the second most powerful person in the country, if not the world. And the fact that she's blaming everybody else for basically what amount to excuses for her administration is telling. Also, you nailed point 1A, I would say, the fact that she doesn't do any hard-hitting interviews. I think part 1B of that is that 50-second soundbite that Carly tossed to. There wasn't one truth in there, Joe. Did you hear one truthful statement that she said?
Particularly around the border, right? Because, as you mentioned, she was the border czar. She was appointed to fix the problem at the U.S. southern border and root causes, so to speak. And instead, we've now had more than 10 million people come into this country over the last 3 years, including hundreds on the terror watch list under her watch. In other words, if this is her responsibility as vice president, then this is basically her. She needs to be held accountable for it. And of course, Jimmy Kimmel isn't going to do that. And the fact that in general that the Biden-Harris administration is blaming Republicans for what we're seeing at the U.S. southern border is laughable to the point of ludicrous. So, yeah, I mean, there wasn't one truth about what she said, but she could say that with Jimmy Kimmel because, again, he is a hacktivist and he is not anything. I get that it's late night and it's supposed to be comedy, but be a human being and be like, wait a minute, that's wrong, or wait a minute, don't you think that what you said was misleading? Of course you're not going to get that because, again, it's Jimmy Kimmel.
Right. Okay, so, Joe, the Wall Street Journal has an article titled Behind Closed Doors, Biden Shows Signs of Slipping. Quote, Biden started the meeting reading from notes to make broad points about the need to give money to Ukraine, which struck several participants as odd, given that the lawmakers present already generally agreed that more funds were needed. Some attendees attendees had trouble hearing him. Biden deferred so frequently to other lawmakers that much of the conversation didn't include him. Some people who attended the meeting recall when questions came directly to him, he would turn to staffers. They said you couldn't be there and not feel uncomfortable. Latest Fox News Power Rankings shows Trump leading Biden by 21 points on the question of being more physically and mentally fit. What about these concerns?
Well, we've heard them before, Carly, right? I mean, this is something that is a central part of this campaign right now, which is if this is the 81-year-old version of Joe Biden right now in June of 2024, what does this version look like if he somehow wins the presidency once again and is in the Oval Office, let's say in 2027 or 2028 for that matter, because he'll be there until January of 2029. What are we looking at here as far as this deterioration of a man who at this point shouldn't be a golf starter at your local golf course, let alone the president of the United States? So this is something that we see in public. You can only imagine what he looks like when the cameras are not there. And Americans really need to consider, okay, is this the person that I really want to vote for in terms of does he have his fastball anymore if he had a fastball in the first place, more like a knuckleball throughout his entire career? And then who's the backup? The aforementioned Kamala Harris. Right. So this is something the Trump campaign needs to hammer home, and they have. That is, do you want to elect this man who will be 86 years old when he's in his second term as president, and then the backup is, if he decides to resign or something else happens, is Kamala Harris running the show here. And I just think that that's something that even independents and some Democrats cannot stomach at this point, Carly.
That will be the question on the minds of voters come November. Joe, thank you so much for joining us. Have a great day.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.